Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our budget meeting this evening on October 18th, 2023. My name is Councillor Neil Ansett. I'm the chair of this year's budget committee, and our vice chair is Councillor Mark Nordham. I'll begin by calling this meeting to order, and I would ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes is 7 p.m. We'll begin this evening with the playing of O Canada. Those as able, please stand. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous people of Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. At this time, we'll be asking for a disclosure of pecuniary interest. I haven't seen anything to date. As council will know, members have a requirement to disclose a pecuniary or financial interest and state the effect of that. I will ask at this time if any council member has anything to declare. Okay, seeing none. Next, we will, as some of you may be aware, Councillor Matt Richardson is not able to attend in person this evening. So we have a motion, and I'll read it into the record here. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth permits Councillor Richardson's remote participation at the October 18th, 2023 budget meeting. Looking for mover, Councillor Rothwell and Deputy Mayor Kellum. I'd ask for the vote on that, please. And that is carried. Thank you. And welcome, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm just staying home to keep my terms on this side of the table. So thank you so much. I appreciate council letting me attend.
You're welcome. We hear you loud and clear. I also have attendance regrets this evening from Councillor Matt Duncan and from Councillor Johnson, may be here as well, but we're going to play that one by ear. All right, looking at the agenda. Before we approve the agenda, council will be aware that there was some items circulated earlier this afternoon, some addendums to the agenda, some 4 additional capital items, and those will be discussed and covered this evening by our operations manager, Lyndon Couch. So if anyone has any questions or amendments to the agenda, I'd hear those at this time. Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda as circulated this evening. Councillor Blazek will move that, and Councillor Andreessen will second that. Have the vote, please. That is carried. Thank you. Next, looking at the consent agenda, we have one item this evening on our consent agenda, and it's the budget meeting minutes from our September 13th meeting. Does anyone have any questions on those? Okay, hearing none. I'll look for a motion on that the minutes of the September 13th, 2023 budget meeting be adopted. Moved by Mayor Kasenberg, seconded by Councillor Nordum. I'll have a vote for that, please. And that is carried. Thank you. All right. Next, we'll move into our delegations and presentations section. And before we get started, council will be aware that there's the budget ebook that was in your package. Was everyone able to access that? Were there any issues? Okay. So hearing none, we'll begin with our first delegation, which is from our CEO, Chris Snow.
Thank you, Budget Chair and Council. So I'd like to begin tonight with just an overview of the budget process. So the 2024 capital budget is very similar to previous years in presentation, and each department will present a high-level overview of their projects for 2024. Certainly, please feel free to ask any questions about any of the projects in the draft capital budget. Similarly, like to last year, the staff did a ranking of the 2024 capital projects, and this can be found at the back of tonight's presentation. The new tool being introduced tonight is the 10-year capital forecast. The forecast is staff's best estimates for the next 10 years using asset management planning and the known growth pressures. The forecast is subject to change and will become more accurate as we continue to refine our assessment management plans, our asset management plans, and have more information regarding our growth through documents like the county official plan and the master servicing study. In the meantime, this will provide council with a picture of the future and a rough timeline from staff when we expect projects to be started and completed. Becky will certainly outline the 10-year forecast, the ranking, and carryover later in tonight's meeting. Thank you. So I'll start the CAO's project sheet. I only have one. It's basically a carryover from last year. It's the Binning Street development plan, or the West development plan as we're calling it now internally. I still hope to have the RFP and the RFP out soon and the vendor selected in 2023, but the majority of the work will be completed in 2024. I'm still confident that we will meet all the timelines of the official plan, so the property will still be ready for development once the county approved official plan is passed and approved. Actually, I had an update on that tonight or today, so I can provide that to council. The plan is that the county OP will be coming to county council in draft, I believe the second meeting in November, and then the public consultation process will begin after, or if council approves the draft. And so probably consultation probably in December and January. So look forward to that coming from county. Does anybody have any questions? I will now ask Jessica to complete the strategic initiatives component.
So for the Strategic Initiatives Department for the 2024 capital budget, we have two projects coming forward. The first is a carryover from the 2023 budget, and that is the Listowel Downtown Parkette. We are anticipating that construction will be complete on the parkette this year, but depending on weather, some of the landscaping installation work may carry over into 2024. So we have included that cost in the 2024 capital budget proposal, which is just over $32,000. The second project being proposed would be a new project, and that is community welcome resource signage. This project will include the investigation, design, manufacturing, and installation of some sort of community welcoming and resource signage and/or public art throughout the community. This project will be supported quite significantly by the North Perth Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee. Some preliminary discussions amongst staff have highlighted the option to consider this project for the public art space that will be in the Listowel Downtown Parkette. So we're proposing a project cost for this project at $40,000. This could potentially be lower depending on what type of signage that we move forward with. And then in terms of the 10-year capital forecast for the Strategic Initiatives Department, this is quite high level at this time, but there are a few items that we did include in our forecast. The first would be in 2025, and we are anticipating some sort of municipal housing build to begin that year. Looking at examples from other area municipalities, we are including a potential cost of $3 million. This is very preliminary at this time, and staff will investigate partnership models for the operation of this facility. The next would be in 2026, and this would be a public transportation project. It would include the investigation of and implementation of a public transportation system in North Perth. This could complement the PC Connect system that is currently being run by the county and the city of Stratford that North Perth is partnering on, dependent on the sustainability of that pilot project. So we're anticipating costs of $300,000, but that is, again, very preliminary. The next two items that we are forecasting would occur in 2027 and 2030, and those would be the replacement of the wayfinding signage that was installed throughout the municipality in 2017 and 2020, as well as implementation of further elements of the Streetscape Master Plan in Atwood and Moncton. So both of those, the wayfinding signage is anticipated to be $300,000, and the streetscape elements are anticipated to be $320,000. I can take any questions about the projects that I have covered.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. Does council have any questions at this time? Councillor Andreessen?
Thank you. Through the chair. I'm really excited about the public art that we're proposing and having a budget towards that. Just wondering if some additional consultation, even with economic development, could happen in terms of ideas for subject matter around some of the art. So just a thought. And I know it's not about budget, but I just thought if you could make note of that, that'd be great.
Yes, definitely. It will involve significant public consultation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Rothwell, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks very much for your presentation. In terms of like the 2025 and 6 and 7 that you spoke about, are there any project sheets as well along with that, or have I just missed them?
I don't believe the project sheets were included in this flipbook, but we could send them out.
No, that's fine. I just there was no information there, so I mean, I was paying attention. It's just a matter that for us, going forward, I think we might want to have something in there as a sort of a placeholder as we look forward to those 2024 all the way through to 2027. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. You'll make a note to distribute those. Thanks very much. Does anyone have any other questions or comments at this time? Okay, seeing none, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Ms. McLean. Next, we'll invite Chief Pape for her presentation.
Good evening, Chair Anstett and Council. There are two capital projects specific to the North Perth Fire Department that I will highlight for you tonight. Additional facility and fleet projects attributed to development and protective services are identified by my colleagues, Mr. Newell and Mr. Couch, in their budgets. The first project is an annual allocation for required personal protective equipment for North Perth's firefighters. This includes gear, helmets, boots, pagers, portable radios, masks, air packs that are to be replaced every 10 years. The annual amount required to equip a roster of 70 firefighters is approximately $76,502. The second capital project is an annual allocation required to replace composite air cylinders. SCBA were upgraded in a bulk purchase in 2018. The life expectancy of the air cylinders is 15 years. An annual allocation to replace the composite cylinders is recommended at a cost of $19,000. With respect to the 10-year capital forecast, as Ms. McLean mentioned earlier, this is a high-level projection at this time. In addition to the allocations I just spoke of, 2028, we will see the need to replace the auto extrication equipment at our Listowel station at a cost of roughly $35,000. The auto extrication equipment has a life expectancy of roughly 10 years. Our equipment is not used enough to replace it every 10 years. So we do stretch that out a little longer. We have it annually checked and inspected to make sure that it's still safe. So we do stretch that out a little longer. Also, in 2028, we will be looking to replace the tanker in our Moncton station at a cost of replacement cost of roughly $450,000. And portable pumps in both of our Atwood and Moncton station will require replacement at a cost of $20,000. In 2032, the rescue pumper in our Listowel station, Unit 12, is due for replacement. Fire apparatus are rated, and that's how fire insurance premiums are determined in a community. And so there is certain expectation within the industry that frontline trucks are replaced within a 20 or 25-year life cycle, depending on what operation they serve. Happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Chief Pape. Are there any questions for Chief Pape on any of her projects? Mayor Kasenberg, go ahead.
Not just for Chief Pape, but for budget staff in general. I'm taking note in the project sheets under the issue or the area around asset management that there's not really much shown around future depreciation budget costs, and I would like some kind of understanding of what's supposed to be there. Is anything supposed to be there? Is it hit and miss? Do we need information about how we plan the replacement of these assets? Because certainly, you're talking about PPE and 10-year cycles. I always believed that the intent was to put aside money each year so that the 10 years out, you can actually do something about it.
Through you. We do have, some of this was previously allocated in our operating budget. But because they're pooled, so when we're purchasing bunker gear, we're looking at about $3,000 per set. And because we're now purchasing in larger numbers, because our roster has increased, we've moved it over to the capital project. So you will see that reflected in my operating budget, that some of those funds that we would normally put aside in operating have been shifted over to capital.
Okay. But if I might, but nevertheless, I mean, I thought our intent, and I'm looking at Deputy Treasurer Belfour here, I thought our intent was in the long term to be putting aside money to replace these assets at the next replacement point. Could maybe you explain the intentions around this? If the chair doesn't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Belfour?
Go ahead, Ms. Belfour.
So currently, what happens, you will see in your operating budget, there's an expenditure for depreciation, which is based on historic costs. So that amount of money is captured every year in the operating budget, that as an expense to be put aside for future assets to be purchased. So when we did the asset management plan last time, they suggested for the 40-year term, an additional $254,000 be put into our operating budget, which we are doing. So the depreciation only allocates based on historic costs currently. We are far more ahead of the game compared to a lot of municipalities, but it is not full replacement cost. So Janny's capturing this in her budget. A lot of the departments are working on, from our asset management plan, what needs to happen over the next 10 years based on that asset management plan. What they're putting in their budget is what it's going to cost us. We are putting aside money each year to help offset those costs. So.
Supplemental, go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understand that, there's that sort of model where you put aside money through depreciation to replace at today's value. But then there's that sort of model that insurers certainly use a lot, where you can buy insurance that takes you to the future value, what they project the cost to be at the next replacement point. So how are we doing on that score? I want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, CAO Snell, if you wanted to go ahead.
What Becky just described, we're not.
Okay.
So I think that's the next step, and Becky and I have had several conversations about this actually, is how do we get from historical costs, and like Becky said, many municipalities aren't even capturing that. We've started that. How do we get to future replacement costs? And we've talked about how we phase that in over time, because we can't, it would be a burden for us to jump from that for all our departments. It would be cost prohibitive probably. But we talked about what departments we look at phasing in that with. The interesting part is we haven't even necessarily got a good account on our facility assets for even the historical costs yet, which we are working on right now, which will still impact our current budget as of today, but we are still lacking, as you said, that future costs. We're probably not putting enough away.
Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, I think this is terrible. I'm abusing the chair's
no problem.
rights here. I think it would be incumbent on us to start thinking seriously about that future value replacement, and maybe a report could come to council in the near future that sort of begins to outline a process or a plan. Now, I know, I'm going to be honest, I know we need a new treasurer, so that's a piece of work that lies ahead, but it certainly seems important to me that we're planning for future value so that future taxpayers are not going to be clobbered when it comes time to replace the next iteration of this equipment.
So that's one of the things we're working on with Hempson, with the current update of our asset management plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. Are there any other questions at this time? I'll actually just ask one, Chief Pape. I just noticed on both of yours, and if I missed this, I apologize in advance, just about the gear and the SCBAs. Those are for current firefighters. That doesn't include potential recruits that may come down the road?
We have a roster number of 70. That's what we're striving towards. 30 at our Listowel station, 20 in Atwood, 20 in Moncton. We're not there yet, but that's what we're hoping to get towards. That does... recruitment in our Atwood and Moncton stations is tough historically, but that's what we're working towards, is a roster of 70.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, CAO Snell.
And I think traditionally we would buy a few pieces of equipment every year and spread those costs out, but it's one thing, especially with stuff like SCBAs, it's more cost effective and better for our firefighters to buy them in bulk. Sure. And so that's one of the main transitions to this sort of budgeting process.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Any other questions at this time for Chief Pape? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that. And thanks, Chief Pape, for the presentation. So just further on that last point from CAO Snell, is there any ability for our municipalities to go together with other fire departments for a bulk purchase of these sorts of things, provided that this is the same or similar equipment? Is that sort of a pool so that we can get the best apparatus for the lowest cost?
It's certainly a good question. When it comes to SCBA, not everyone uses the same type, and they're not all compatible. And so we can't all purchase. If we aren't all purchasing the same, we wouldn't receive that same discount. I have spoken to a few different chiefs in a neighboring county where they do bulk purchasing, and so we're considering that. But it's the timing isn't always the same as ours. So in Wellington County, for instance, they just made a big purchase of SCBA. We don't need ours yet. So it's to try to find the right dance partner, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Again, just in terms of looking into the future, it would be great if we could get into a group buying situation like that, not just for the fire department, but I think for everything. We've talked about that for some time. So we'll just encourage and support that to happen, and hopefully we'll find a partner or two or a whole bunch to dance with. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Thank you very much, Chief Pape. Next, we'll invite up our Manager of Environmental Services, Mark Hackett, for his presentation.
Thanks, Chair Anstett and Council. The first one I have is for the Solid Waste Division. I just have one project there, and that's for next year for the development of the next cell for waste disposal at the Elm landfill. So it'll involve moving some topsoil, some road building to allow access to the new cell, and also to provide some interim cover over the existing cell. Looking at it, I don't really have anything else in there for the 10-year project. This is something we think is going to last for a fair bit of time because we're reaching to the back end of the landfill with this one. The second part I have is for the wastewater division. I have 4 projects for the year. The first one is for the hydraulic re-rating of the wastewater treatment plant. This kind of been an ongoing one that we've been working on for the last few years. We are continuing to prepare for application to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to increase hydraulic capacity at the wastewater treatment plant. And we are currently collecting data from the Maitland River over the next few years to support this application. And also there's some engineering costs in there each year. And looking at in the 10-year project, that's one of the ones. Maybe I'll go over those at the end. I'll go do them all together. It might be easier. The second project is the effluent filters and pump replacement. So that would be the next step in replacing equipment. That's original equipment from 1994. Pretty well everything else in the plant has been replaced. And so 2024, we would see the design and drawings developed for that project. And then 2025, we would put it out to tender and hopefully have construction completed by the end of 2025. The third project is the wastewater sanitary trunk main structure repair. So there's an existing sanitary trunk main in Listowel that conveys raw sewage to the wastewater treatment plant. It's directly upstream of Highway 23 pump station that was installed in around 1969. And we do have issues at time with groundwater infiltration. So we did a condition assessment on that pipeline where we did a camera of the pipe and also had a visual inspection of there's about 7 or 8 maintenance hole access things there and those were all, the actual piping was in pretty good condition. We were happy to see that, but the maintenance structures were not in the greatest condition, so there's a fair bit of leakage around there. So when we have high rain events, we get a lot of rainwater into that pipe, which ends up going out to the treatment plant to be treated. So we're hoping to put that out to tender or out to a request for proposal because there's different methods or different ways that they could repair those or possibly replace them. So that is for next year as well. And finally, a carryover of the septic receiving station clarifier upgrades. That was approved by council earlier this year, and the contract was awarded also earlier this year, and we're hoping to get started on that project this year. But some supply chain issues created some problems, and also the first bit of work that has to be done at the septic receiving station has to be done in a certain temperature, and we missed that this year. So the entire project will be completed in 2024. So that's the wastewater division. If we look at some of the things that are on upcoming, then I've put over the 10-year cycle a septic receiving station auger replacement. We do that every 3 or 4 years, so that's been put in. The hydraulic re-rating of the treatment plant, which I discussed earlier, that's for the next 5 years of doing sampling on the Maitland River and the engineering costs involved. I've put in 2026 a Class EA for the wastewater treatment plant. That will dictate what we need to do to be able to make sure we have capacity at the wastewater treatment plant. So there will be some bigger numbers coming there, probably 10, 11, 12, 15 years. We don't know for sure. We'll have to wait and see. But at this point, it would be just a complete guess to be able to provide numbers for that work that would need to be done. That would be an expansion of the plant, not a replacement of any of the current equipment that's there or tankage. We have in 2025, and again, it's an estimate of $6 million for the filter replacement and effluent pump replacement. And that's what I had in the 10-year project. And for the water division, we have 4 projects. The first one is we had a hydrogeological groundwater assessment that had been approved in 2023 for Atwood. This assessment was to be coordinated with the ongoing master servicing review being done for Atwood and Listowel. That hasn't complete at this point. So we're kind of moving this into next year. Regardless, to be able to supply Atwood with the water capacity that they need based on the current growth that it's experiencing and potential further growth, we want to make sure that we have a couple different options, and either of the options that we would come up with, either putting in a new well in Atwood or a third well in Atwood, or there's a possibility of over-drilling one of the other wells to be able to increase the capacity. Either way, we'd have to do a municipal class environmental assessment, so that would be in 2024, and that will guide us on what steps to take after that. We also have the annual well inspections. So each year we do, according to our North Perth well maintenance plan, we pull a pump from one of the wells and we do a downhole video and inspect the well casing. Next year it's well 6 in Listowel for 2024, and we're also looking at replacing the existing piping inside the well house. It's getting not in the greatest condition anymore, and we wanted to replace it with stainless steel piping. And then in the 10-year plan, you'll see each year we have that budgeted out for the different wells. We're also looking at the second project in Atwood for the Atwood Reservoir to replace the high lift pumps. This has to do more with the current growth that's occurring in Atwood, and being able to ensure that we're able to meet the instantaneous peak flows that could be occurring with more people there watering lawns and things like that. So we're looking at replacing or upsizing the 3 high lift pumps at the Danbrook well in 2024. Finally, we have a water and wastewater rate study and financial plan. So the current financial plan that we have in place for the water and wastewater systems is in need of being updated as part of the renewal of our municipal drinking water licenses. And that renewal is in 2025. So we wanted to do in 2024, have the financial plan developed, and also at the same time have a rate study done to ensure that we're making sure we have enough funds, because we are required to be self-funding for our water and wastewater systems. And then looking at the 10-year plan, I've included the well inspections, the water tower cleaning, which we did this year. I hope everyone had a peek at it. It looked really good on the outside. It had got quite dirty on the outside. So the inside and the outside was cleaned. And we do that about every 3 or 4 years. So that's been included over that time period. And we're also looking at possibly doing a Class EA for the Listowel water system to look at future needs. Typically, it takes about 4 to 5 years to be able, if you have to drill a new well, to get approvals to get through that process. So we wanted to start it around 2025, I believe, or 2026, sorry, is when we were planning on doing that. So those are the projects that I have. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Hackett. Are there any questions at this time? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Chair Anstett. Thank you, Mark, for your presentation. Just back to the very first item about the landfill and opening the new cell. could you just provide council with a little bit of background in terms of our expected life expectancy of the landfill in Elman? And specifically, I guess, this is a new cell, and if there's any other cells beyond that, and what's our target in the future?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I don't have the exact number right now. It's usually around this time that we gather the data, and our engineer gives us the final number of the life expectancy of the landfill. I believe last year was about 90 years. It fluctuates a little bit with the amount of waste that comes in. So we still have quite a bit of time. We have a lot of areas that will need to be developed over the years. What we're planning to do with this one is try to reach all the way to the back so we can start working up against the current profile of the landfill and fill up against it. And it should last quite a while. And we actually are lucky that there is a nice seam of gravel there that we're able to use to build some of these roads. It's a big cost savings. It's a huge cost savings for us. So.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that. And again, my role on Blue Water Recycling Association, we do talk about landfill capacity in different municipalities. We are very fortunate. I knew we had a fairly long runway in terms of our life expectancy of our landfill. There's many municipalities that don't have that same capacity at all, and new landfills are not coming online very quickly, and they're extremely costly. So I think the foresight of previous councils is to be commended, and thank you and your staff for continuing us on. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. Any other questions at this time? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, Councillor Richardson, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, the chair. Just wondering and thank you for your presentation, Mark. I'm just wondering about we had talked about increasing pump capacity and stuff like that, and cast our mind back to when we also had, especially on the 10-year forecast, about the possible, depending on growth patterns and everything for the expansion. Do these take into account the expansion of the wastewater treatment facility? We had that presentation from GM Blue Plan quite a while ago, talking about that there is still life left in it, but is some of this forecasting taking that net growth into account as well? And possibly, especially if it's 10 years out, I can't recall exactly what the number was, but just thought I'd pose the question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Matt. I think we're hoping that doing the environmental assessment that'll come in the next couple of years for the wastewater treatment plant will guide us down that road of what we'll need to do next to expand. We've done everything that's humanly possible at the wastewater treatment plant now, and we've been doing this, council has been endorsing this for a number of years to upgrade that plant to be able to handle what it does handle now and the strengths of the waste that it handles. So we were hoping to be able to go through a process where we didn't have to do any expansion, but that is possible. I'm not sure if we'll get through that or not. We've been working towards that, so we're still gathering information. The last bottleneck that we had at the wastewater treatment plant were the filters and effluent pumps, and that's being addressed upon approval of council, and we should be in a much better position to be able to apply to the ministry. We perform an important part of growth here to be able to handle the waste that's being generated. We also provide a service to our surrounding areas at the septic receiving station. And I think that all needs to be taken into consideration when we meet with the ministry again. I don't know that they firmly grasp what we do there, to tell you the honest truth.
Go ahead. Thanks. Go ahead, Chris Ciosno.
Thank you.
As too, also, I think it would call for Matt's presentation. Our infiltration number is still fairly high compared to provincial averages. And the project that Mark is looking at doing next year with the main going to the pumping station will hopefully improve that number greatly. Infiltration's a hard thing to kind of pick off, but we do think this is one location that can hopefully improve our infiltration numbers, which will then lead to our plant to handle more growth.
Yeah, I think if I could add to that, Chris, when the work that on the subdivision or the work that Lyndon's been doing on different areas in town really makes a big difference, because you're replacing old pipe with new pipe, and most older pipes has leaks, and we're getting ground whenever we have really wet. The ground's really wet for a long period of time, our flows are up. So when we replace these areas at council's direction, it really makes a big difference in those numbers. And I think we've seen, I don't recall exactly what the number was from the presentation that Matt Ash gave from Jam Blue Plan, but the actual per capita number is going down, which is the direction we want it to be for the amount of waste being produced. So I think we're in the right direction. But there's always things we can do to do better.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry to step.
Are there any other questions at this time for Mr. Hackett? Okay, thanks very much. Okay, next we will hear from our manager of facilities, Mr. Jeff Newell, and I believe Jeff is remote.
Good evening. Is the test working? Everyone can hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Chair Anstett and members of council. Rather than going through all of the capital projects listed for the facility department, I will touch on a few that I feel are of interest. And this would be in relation to whether it is a large budgetary request or has a high priority ranking. Just of note, we are waiting on results from the 2023 facility review, which was underway and being implemented currently. This will help guide us in forecasting projects for 2025 and beyond. That is a review of all of our facilities, and as such, we will be able to do a better job across all departments with some of the forecasting, whether it be furnishings or building envelopes that need to be addressed. The first one that I wanted to talk about was the Listowel Aquatic Facility. We are currently in the process of working with an architect firm, as was approved in the 2023 budget. They're working on concept drawings, and this should be completed by the end of the year. Feedback. In 2024, we will have detailed drawings drafted and selected a contractor if the budget is approved. The in-ground work would commence in 2025. The budget request has been split over 2 years. It should be noted that pricing and budget request is very preliminary, as costs will be determined once contract is awarded. The budget request is based on pricing for similar sized projects in other communities, as well as the anticipation that costs for building materials will continue to increase. $5 million is the request, and it would be split between 2024 and 2025. The next project I wanted to highlight was the Atwood Lions Playground. The playground structure in Atwood at the Lions Park has reached the end of its life expectancy. With the growth in North Perth and Atwood in particular, the park is and will continue to be a destination location. In 2023, Memorial Park will have a new playground similar in scope to the one in Listowel is what we're planning for the one in Atwood. And the amount that we spent for the Memorial Park playground, or we're in the process of, is $300,000, and we're looking to twin that or make a similar playground for the same amount of money in Atwood. The next project is the Atwood Elma Memorial Community Center rejuvenation drawings. In 2024, we will begin a process of rejuvenating the EMCC. To this end, we are requesting funding to complete concept drawings in preparation for a future facility renovation. The estimated cost, should this be approved, is approximately $70,000. We do have a number of parks that I wanted to touch on. The first one being Listowel's Hannah's Haven Park. And with that park and the Warb Subdivision Park and the Nickel Park, in each of the cases, we've had drawings completed in 2023 of a concept for the parks. Detailed drawings and contract administration along with site preparation will begin in 2024 with project completion in 2025. Budget request for Hannah's Haven Park of $945,000 is made in each of years 2024 and 2025. That does have a sticker shock with it, but that is a 5-acre piece of property that we're looking at developing, so it will be costly. Ford Subdivision Park is a carryover, so similar to Hannes Haven Park, the drawings have been completed, and the difference being is we would like to have this park in Gowan Sound completed in 2024. It's a smaller neighborhood park, and we feel that we can tackle it in a timely fashion. This is a carryover project from that park development project that we had completed in 2023. The cost is estimated at $480,000 and would be applied to, if approved, would be applied to the 2024 budget. The following project is the Listowel Carnegie Library structural repairs. This takes a little bit of explaining. Council had given approval for roof repair of $150,000 for 2023 to address water and drainage issues. And after we had a historic building designated engineer do an evaluation of the property, they said that the main concern is that the leveling out of the east side of the building, which is basically to the east on the main floor, and then the programming room below that has the supporting structure is beginning to fail. And one would note that when you walk on a floor that is 100 years or more older, it does creak. But this has some telltale signs to it where corner molding is starting to separate and doors are starting to rub on floors. So we've realigned that funding to from being roof and water based project to looking at leveling out the floor there. So the request that we're making is for the remaining funds of what we're doing this year to be carried into 2024 to once again address the water and roof repairs. So that would be whatever is remaining out of the 2023 remaining project funds. We're not anticipating that the structural repair would be costly. It's really jacking up the floor in a number of locations. We've done a lot of work to determine that there's not any asbestos in the building and some other engineering costs. But I think it will be a fairly not too expensive a project. The next thing is our Fairview Cemetery request for columbariums. Columbarium interments are on the rise, which has prolonged the lifespan of the current facility or the Fairview Cemetery. Staff have identified the need for a number of smaller columbariums to augment the existing larger ones that are currently there. But the life expectancy of the cemetery is being extended by having these columbariums, and we're looking at just making some cosmetic changes by adding some smaller ones. In the future, we would look at also an additional large one, but right now the concrete has been poured and readied for some smaller ones, and the budget request is $36,000. Listowel Nickel Park, I've touched on some of the parks, but this is the one just off of Twomley behind the Pioneer gas station. We've got the drawings completed for the concept of the park. It's been taken to neighbors and the public. Detailed drawings and contract administration along with site preparation will begin in 2024 with the project completion of 2025. The request is for a split of funding, so it would be $481,000 in each of years 2024 and 2025. And finally, the MAP 59 park is currently in the detailed design and environmental assessment stage. A contractor and tendering process will be identified very shortly, so that work can be completed in 2024. Fundraising for the project continues and is very successful and is in excess of $500,000 currently. The overall project cost is anticipated to be $1.4 million for the project, and council has approved that in 2023, and we're just moving it into 2024 as work is starting now, but will continue into 2024. Those are the highlight ones that I picked out. As I mentioned, there is a number of other projects there. So if people are interested in hearing about one of the other projects, certainly ask away. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. At this time, do we have questions for Jeff on any of his projects that he's highlighted? Go ahead, Mark Kasenberg.
Chair Anstett. Mr. Newell, thanks for this. Obviously, a very ambitious portfolio in 2024. And, I'll raise the usual concern about the capacity of staff to manage the scope of projects that seem to be proposed here, which, I invite your feedback on. But I do want to sort of highlight a couple things. I note, and it's a positive and favorable note, that we still expect fundraising money from the MAP 59 project to come in and support the efforts to reconstruct that. And yet, when I look at the pool in Listowel, and I look at the playground in Atwood, I don't see any proposed fundraising inputs for those projects. Historically, certainly, pools have been fundraised for. And I appreciate that in this community, at this point in time, when we don't have the sort of strength and diversity of service clubs and so forth that we had in the history of Listowel and North Perth. But I'm concerned about a $5 million pool that's being paid solely from the taxpayers' purse and development charges without any fundraised inputs. And so I want to highlight that issue because certainly that's becoming an awfully expensive pool, in my opinion. And I know that pool costs are high. I've had some interaction with Mayor Lennox and the challenges that they're facing. And I think theirs is even higher at this point. But $5 million for a pool and no fundraising commitment leaves me a little frustrated. I have to own that. Likewise, you'll hear me rant again. I'm about to rant again about the cost of playground equipment. When we face $300,000 for a set of playground equipment, I know I'm exaggerating a shade, but I do a lot of sort of equivalency mapping in my head. Like, what could $300,000 buy? And we're not too far off buying one unit of a semi-detached home. I know housing costs have gone higher than that, but the actual cost to build a home are in that ballpark, a little higher certainly. And so when I think that we're paying $300,000 for doing a new playground, as much as I appreciate that youth need things to do and places to be, and so forth, that looks like an awfully big price tag, especially in light of notions that I recall in my service as mayor, actually, over the course of my term as mayor, wherein playground equipment was replaced or was planned for replacement at the Elma School, and the ask at the time was $100,000, and that was like 3 years ago. So how did we move from $100,000 for playground at the school to $300,000 for playground equipment replacement, and pushing us cost-wise from an equivalency perspective into a mighty nice car? Or I don't even know if I could name a brand of car that you'd have to pay $300,000 for. Maybe Deputy Mayor Kellum or Councillor Rothwell could answer that one. Or pretty far along in building a semi-detached home. So those numbers stand out.
Yes, I can appreciate that. If I could comment on the fundraising aspect, I fully intend that there would be fundraising as part of it, but because we're so early into the process and we don't have budget approval, all I can speculate through conversations I've had with various service clubs that there is an appetite there, but at this point it's too early to say. They haven't made a commitment for X amount of dollars for any of the projects at this point, because they're still in the development stages, and we're just looking for budget approval at this point. Once we get that, certainly there would be an approach to those service clubs as an example, or the community, to look at a donation process. So yes, that won't be an oversight.
Thanks, Mayor Kasenberg, and thanks, Jeff. And I'll just jump in at this point before I open it up back up to council. I too share your concerns, Mayor Kasenberg, about the pool. I too have had some discussions with Mayor Lennox from Wellington North and with Councillor McCabe. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, their costs are actually approaching $6 million at this point. And I believe in their initial budget talks, when they had brought up a pool, it was around the $5 million mark. My concern, and I'll just say it, I think we want to be very careful about how we proceed with the pool. Just making sure, and when I say that, I mean making sure we know exactly what we want. Because as I've seen in projects, is that you kind of add things on and you add things on, and next thing you know, the costs have not doubled maybe, but they've certainly gone up in great fashion. So that would be the one comment I would make about the pool. Obviously, the fundraising piece is another concern. I tip our hat to our service community, or service clubs in our community. They do a great job. But again, I think that we want to have a clear expectation of what that pool looks like before we go to the Kinsman Club or whoever that may be and say, can you fundraise for X number of dollars? So I think that we just need a little bit more discussion on that. The other ones that I highlighted too, the OPP station. Now I know, Jeff, in your report, you mentioned that there's a potential new building coming, and perhaps CEO Snell could comment on that. My concern is just how much more are we going to be putting into this building before we possibly get a new one? It just seems to me, again, this is just thinking out loud, but we don't want to be throwing a lot of money if we're going to be getting a new building in 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So CEO Snell, could you possibly weigh in on that? Thanks.
Well, I'd like to begin by saying we're really in the early stages of exploring an alternate location for the OPP. Certainly, we haven't got even down far enough along the funding model with the province to know if it's an attainable project, because it certainly needs to basically be financed through the OPP, through the province, through the payment of rent to make this work. So we're just having those conversations with Infrastructure Ontario in the near future. So there's a long road ahead. I would say we're still going to have to maintain this building for the short term. Even if we had approval to start probably today, we're still probably going to be 3 to 5 years out before we'd actually be moving into a new facility.
Thank you. At this point, is there any other questions from other members of council regarding any of these proposed projects? Yeah, Mark Kasenberg, go ahead.
Check in with Mr. Newell about security. I noticed that there was a security project that was listed, and I just want to sort of, I guess, reinforce my opinion that we need to be investing in that security stuff, including in some of our parks, looking at cameras and so forth. So if the budget that you've proposed doesn't yet consider that, as much as I hate to say raise that line item, you might want to raise that line item.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we do have some infrastructure in place, and so cameras, the technology is improving and the cost is coming down, and we may be able to address some of those concerns, like individual park cameras, within our operating budget that wouldn't be covered as a capital expense as such, because it's not over that $10,000 threshold. But for the two office buildings, we need to, I mean, the sale needs to close yet, but we need to get IT in there right away and start looking at what are the needs, and we would try to mirror the application with our current 330 Wallace and 104 Wallace, so that we have standardized security in each of those buildings.
Okay, go ahead. I believe Councillor Richardson wanted to ask a question. Go ahead, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you. Through the chair. Perhaps I missed it mixed into the report. I know it was discussed quite a while ago at council, and possibly it's maybe rolled into the manager of strategic initiatives for the community flagpole. And I know it was mentioned maybe at the in the center of the button at the roundabout, and I'm not sure exactly where that would fall under. Is that rolled into something, or is that a totally separate line item that needs to be added? And unless I've missed it in the past of where that's conversation is at, because I think it certainly would be an addition. I thought it was in the Jessica's presentation to begin with the possibly in that community signage and artwork, but I'm not sure if it's in that or not. Just posing the question.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead, Jeff.
basically we're still at we're still at the communication stage of that as far as identifying a location. And if we are to use an existing landscape property, the cost of a flagpole, signage, something like that would be underneath that $10,000 capital threshold, but we could put it into our beautification program or our parks program. It does rest within, depending on the location, it rests with a number of different departments.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to see that it was still on the radar for possibly 2024. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Richardson. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Kellum. I'll go to Councillor Andreessen next.
Yes, and thank you through you, Chair Anstead, and thank you for your report, Jeff. You know, back in our budget visioning, we brought forward maybe a possible location of permanent washrooms at the new MAP project. To this day, I'm still having people request and ask where we're at with that. Do you have any updates? And is that going to be included in this budget or future?
It would be a future budget consideration. Preliminary numbers are in excess of $300,000, which again, ticket shock. But to go with vandal-proof type equipment and furnishings, we're fortunate that we do have the site service with water and sewer already, so we don't have to do much in the way of excavating there. But it would be for a future budget consideration. But we're asking the architects to plan that there'd be a location that we could use. It's just tough when we're already at $1.4 million just to add another $300,000 or $400,000 on top of it right now. So it would be in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Kellum. Go ahead, Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Chair Anstead. I just want to go back to the flagpole discussion. Before making any decisions about that flagpole, I would like to have some more discussion at the council table about what the purpose would be for that, and to gain an understanding of, you know, what we're using that for, if possible, prior to any kind of further allocation of funds towards that. I'd just like to have some more discussion. Thank you.
Certainly, we can make a note of that in the minutes. Is there any other questions at this time? Yeah, go ahead, Vice Chair Nordum.
Thanks to you, Chair Anstead. Thanks for your report, Jeff. So I see that we'll have some lighting upgrades for Perth Meadows and then also for the fire station. So I've seen there might be subsidies and grants possible for the Perth Meadows. Would there also be grants available for the fire station?
Yeah, there is the potential for that. We've experienced that through doing our community centers as well. So it's not necessarily based on the type of facility, but that you're installing lighting. Typically, the rebates are better on bigger projects, and these are limited in scope. It's not the same size as what we're doing as far as like covering a whole arena surface with LED lighting and things like that. But there would be an opportunity to apply for funding.
Are there any other questions at this time for Mr. Newell? Okay, seeing none. Thanks very much, Jeff, for your report.
Thank you very much.
And next we're going to go to Ms. Gangle, I believe. Oh, she doesn't have anything. You're right. I apologize. Sorry about that. Next, we'll go to our Manager of Operations, Mr. Lyndon Couch.
Thank you, you, Chair. Thank you, members of council. I won't be moving through the sheet items individually, but I've categorized them. They will match entirely with the summary that you have right on your first page for operations. So if we need to discuss specific items, we can do by account number at the end of what I have to present. And I'll just get right into it. There were a few latecomers that managed to make it here just today. There were some amendments that were brought in. Those are related to two master plans that are currently being worked on and carried over. One is the master servicing plan that's expected to be completed in the spring. They've done additional work on the modeling, and it's taking some extra time. But the budget was set at 103 for the remainder of the funds to be spent on that, 103,000. So you have that amendment. You also have another amendment on the master plan for transportation. That's to be in front of council by the end of November, first week of December, for a 60-day review, and then on to final acceptance in the beginning of the new year. So those are the two additions there. There's a couple for the building department that I'll mention under fleet as we move through the items. So we won't flip through, but I'll just let you know there are 6 categories. There's urban road reconstruction, which we're familiar with. We do it every year. Elm Street's an example of one that's completing right now as we speak. We either do partial or full reconstructions. Examples of partial and full reconstruction for this year coming in 2024 are Kincaid. Part of it is a full reconstruction except for the water main in the northern block, and the rest is just a resurfacing. So we either replace everything from the sanitary right up to the lighting poles, or we do parts of it. We have a variety of all of those this year. The typical cycle for road reconstruction is 2 to 3 years, where we'll do surveying work, camera work, soils work in year 1. We'll do engineering, securing of services. We'll do design work, and then we'll do construction in a 3rd year, or we'll try and condense that most of the time into a 2-year cycle. Those projects I'll mention as well. Other urban roads in 2024 are John Street, the extension outside of Albert, as well as the design of Tremaine Avenue. Basically, it's full length from Mowat South. York, we'll also look at partial reconstruction, potential water main, and also paving behind McDonald's. And in Moncton, the carryover of the Market Street project, which is linked to a municipal drainage project. 2024, we'll see year 2 of the Binning Street West project. So it'll be fully reconstructed, hopefully very early start in the spring. And that'll be the big job that's going to be in front of the municipality and in front of the people driving the town of Listowel. All of the 2023 projects are pretty much at substantial completion. Elm Street will see curbs in the next couple of weeks and pavement to follow shortly after. That's reconstruction of urban roads. Those are the projects that are listed in front of you here this year. The other category I use is growth. The Northeast Master Plan project that is currently underway, as well as the planned amounts for next year, is a growth related. The widening of Highway 23, we're looking for funding on that one. That's adjacent to the Trident subdivisions and Pioneer Gaspar, as well as the truck route plans. If accepted through the master plan, those are all growth related. Bridge and culvert work is listed as separate line items. Those are rehabs and rebuilds, 1 to 2 year projects. All of this is based on the asset values and inspections done for those culverts and those bridges. And we do those inspections every 2 to 5 years, depending on whether it's internal or external inspection. Stormwater projects include what's listed as a Barber Street project. It's all contingent on the master plan that we're doing right now in terms of where the problems are with stormwater, how we identify projects. There's rural road reconstruction that includes rebuilds like we did on 140, where we're proposing to take that same money and apply it to other sections of North Perth roads that are basically in poor condition in the spring and do rebuilds on those sections, as well as widenings of other sections. They're listed in the asphalt resurfacing project, as well as asphalt resurfacing and pavement preservation. So it's all in rural road reconstruction. Fleet is a final area. A couple amendments. The building department had provided some information on the Mitsubishi, as we know it, inspection vehicle to be replaced with a more durable pickup truck, better for site work, as well as a second unit to serve the same purpose. There are multiple inspectors, very busy. The equipment is needed for both inspectors pretty much every day. They're listed in your amendment, as well as an enforcement vehicle. Bylaws out on the road every day. They have requested through their department a vehicle to get them to the places they need to be daily. So those are those amendments for fleet. Just looking at the 10-year plan, looking ahead, what we hope to do as a GIS Public Works group is map out the 10-year window of road reconstruction projected in the future for you, but it is listed on paper on a year-to-year basis. So that's the 10-year window. Looking ahead, we'd like to map that out so there's a visual for you. Further, the fleet program has been nested together like facilities so that it all falls under one department. Fleet will be kind of brought out, all departments, over a 10-year window, and it'll be explained probably through a spreadsheet in the future. Those are things we're working on. But in front of you is the 10-year forecast. Some very big projects like the Northeast Master Plan build out in the next few years, the final build out, the larger phases, truck routes there, the Listowel downtown core revitalization, having to replace some streets and a lot of infrastructure starts in the next window of 2 to 5 years. So that's why the 10-year program has some very large numbers in the 1 to 5 forecast. I think that's it. I'll answer questions on specific projects and we can turn to those sheets.
Thanks, Mr. Couch. Is there any questions at this point for Mr. Couch? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Chair Anstett. Mr. Coach, can you just clarify for me, because I'm not quite understanding the work from Victoria to Wallace? Can you just clarify that for me? I'm kind of confused on that.
Could you give me the account number?
Oh.
Or just which item?
Yeah, it's fairly early on. Oh, I passed it.
Victoria to Wallace. 5650. Yeah, Victoria Avenue North Main. That'll go, it probably says to Tanner Crescent in the sheet. I don't have it in front of me. It is listed.
I thought it was, I thought you said it was Victoria to Wallace.
Yeah, we'll just get to the main sheet here. Unfortunately, they're in
You
a different.
said, I know, but.
Would you have that one?
Yeah.
Because right now you're doing Elma, right? Which would be.
Yes.
From Victoria to Wallace, that would basically be Elma, would it not be?
So it's the reconstruction of Victoria Avenue from Main Street all the way up to Tanner Crescent,
Okay,
which is
that
the
makes
top
sense.
of Victoria. And in the breakout sheet, it discusses, it's related to the master servicing plan we're doing in stormwater works. So there may be need for extra capacity and an understanding of a larger storm sewer system through that area. Certainly the road's in poor condition and it needs to be reconstructed, but once we get the master plan done, that's a project that could hit earlier than later in terms of the needs for the stormwater. But it's that full section. It's a large project.
So that's Maine to Tanner.
That's the
So
reconstruction.
that's Victoria, Maine to Tanner.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Councillor Andreessen. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Vice Chair Nordum.
Thank you, through you, Chair Anstett, and thanks for your report, Lyndon. So on project 5641, so this bridge culvert on 157. So that's about $225,000. I'm just curious, is that a culvert or is that a bridge?
I think that's a box culvert and that's a rehab and replacement. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I've got too many sheets going here that explain them. Sorry, is that on the screen? Everybody sees it except me. Sorry, Counselor. It should be the, does it say rehab or reconstruction beside that one?
Replacement of culvert.
Yeah. It's likely a concrete box. I'd have to go to the index sheet. to explain it, but it'll be a full replacement of the unit. Sometimes we do take a steel pipe and replace with a concrete box. I can follow up with some exact information on it, but it'll be, if it's full replacement, it's going to be that kind of a cost because it'll be replaced with concrete.
Okay, thank you. I was just kind of curious. I thought that's either a really cheap bridge or an expensive culvert, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Boswick.
Oh, thank you through your chair. Lyndon, we talked about 5615 being the construction of Victoria from Main to Tanner Court, right? And then you have 5612 being the construction from Wallace to Victoria on Binning Street. Is that correct?
Sorry, what was the last number? 56?
5612.
12, okay, thanks. Yes, that's a reconstruction of Binning Street. That's the large project that was planned last year, and we're going to go into construction for it. It's Binning itself all the way out from Main, basically to the Kin Station.
Okay. Do we have a new timeline for that project and how it intersects with the other from Main to Tanner Court?
Yeah. The only impacts would be on the stormwater corridor, and early assessment shows us that we can get out to tender with the Binning Street work with no problem, and it won't impact any changes to the Victoria Street storm sewers. So we hope to be tendering that work out through the winter, and construction starting, as I said, early in the spring next year. But the two would join together. It's the top end of the one system, and it should tie in. But it is flagged to be reviewed as we get into final design and as we tender the work. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, go ahead, Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Chair, and through you. Thanks, Lyndon, for your reports. Item number 5643, yearly sidewalks. And not going into too many details, obviously, but are there any plans to install sidewalk on Tremaine Ave South on one side, as well as on Mitchell Road South? Personally, I'm noticing more and more people seem to be walking along the shoulder of the road. I believe certainly many are employees, I suspect, that are coming back and forth. Is there any plans to put sidewalks in either of those locations, or can we make plans? So from a health safety standpoint, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We put a lot of time looking at the Transportation Master Plan trail network, especially on Tremaine. It's a good opportunity for a multi-use trail to run north-south and to see how far that would run. There's also the ownership by the municipality of the Mowat Street Road Allowance that would link right to Eastdale School for a trail environment. So those are plans that are in the master plan, but they're also to be considered as we look at the design work for Tremaine. So yes, whether it's sidewalk or multi-use trail, either or both are hopefully going to be integrated into the design. Mitchell Road, the sidewalk will be added and is planned to be added south of Kincaid, crossing the malls down to Barnett Street as part of the widening program. So there's storm works that are additional to the widening that's needed for the turning lanes, plus there's some sidewalk needed. So that would extend sidewalk down to Barnett. We've got development on the west side that will be extending sidewalk as part of their commitment all the way down as well to what is the new street on the west side at the south end, whose name I'm forgetting.
Yep, go ahead.
Thanks very much. So is there any opportunity then to look at potentially for sidewalks south of the river to Erie Meats and LTI?
It has been mentioned in discussions with the MTO that they are looking at bike lanes in the Atwood corridor to Newry as part of our discussion about Atwood revitalization and Atwood water main. I do not know if they're planning on extending those bike lanes north. They said that was the second phase of 3, and they've been working on that for several years, but it's all MTO jurisdiction from the bridge, really the northern part of the guide rail of the bridge over the river all the way down there. So it's their project. I'm not sure where that's at, but as we do updates with them, they would advise us on that. There is a trail environment in behind that, we've been looking at for connection with the facilities department in terms of the master plan and trail networks.
Just further, thanks very much. I think it's important. Obviously, you as staff know that there's a lot of people that are using those roadsides, and whatever we can do to hopefully sooner rather than later address the needs for active transportation, walking or cycling, would be advantageous for everyone. But thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Nordham.
Thanks, Chair. Also with the vehicle 5619, so that one's electric for $82,000. Would it not make sense to put a tender in for, like, say, another pickup truck? I mean, the last tender we got was 2 for $50,000 each. Could we go to that rate?
Water Division is still present, and it's a vehicle that they'll be using for specific purposes. And I know we've had good experience with the other electric charge unit that we have in the back of the building that the building department does use. So I think in keeping with that, Mark might be able to add to the rationale behind it, but the electric was a target for that project.
Yeah, come on up, Mr. Hackett.
Thanks. Yeah, that like Lyndon said, that was sort of the thought, that it was a vehicle that we use mainly in town. A lot of stops, a lot of short trips to well, pump house to pump house, and the thought that it could be, part of the climate change program that we're working on as well, but also cost effective simply on the savings in fuel. Again, would be up to council to decide if they want to proceed with it.
Yep, go ahead.
Thanks. No, I just asked the question. I just know I had a visit from one of the building guys, and they weren't overly thrilled with their electric cars, so I figured I'd ask. So thanks.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Any additional questions at this time for Mr. Couch? Okay. Seeing none. Thanks very much, Lyndon, for your report.
I can add that I found the index shows the bridge, the box culvert, it is at 55 out of 100, so that's why it's on the list for full replacement, the one that we were talking about earlier. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks again. All right. So next on our agenda, we have the combined capital budgets. So everyone can see those. They were in your package as well. And I believe they're up on the screen here now as well. So obviously these will show the projects that were just covered in the presentations. So in looking at these, does anyone have any comments or questions that they want to raise at this point? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Andreessen.
Yes, thank you through you, Chair Anstett. I'm just reflecting on our budget visioning, which is in our package and in the very beginning by the agenda. And as we've listened to our capital projects so far, I'm just reflecting back to the kinds of comments we made when we were doing our visioning. And there's a couple of things that I'm wondering about, and one of them is about affordable and attainable housing. This was heavily discussed at the visioning stage, and I'm just wondering if there can be something that's done even starting in 2024 to start thinking about partnerships and also investment into this type of project. I didn't hear it, unless I missed it, but I'm not seeing it reflected in any of the presentations this evening. And I understand this is a big project, I know, but I'm wondering if it's something that we could begin even some initial staging with it in 2024 to at least do some planning and do some setting aside of funding through the budget. So, and I'm thinking, and I could be wrong, it would be part of the Strategic Initiatives Department, I think. but perhaps CO Snell could speak to it, or Jessica, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Go ahead, Ms. McLean.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Andreessen. So the Strategic Initiatives operating budget will include quite a few different proposals in it related to affordable and attainable housing, such as the community improvement plan for affordable housing and some of the planning work related to municipal property in Atwood. That would be the potential site for a build in 2025.
Yes, if I may. I'm excited about that. I can't wait to hear about that from an operations standpoint. I guess I'm just confused about why it's not in capital and why it's operational.
So it would be more like policy and planning work studies. So it wouldn't be assets at this time. So that's why it would not be included in the capital budget.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mayor Kiesenberg.
Sorry, but I think if I remember right, in your projections for the 10 years, you did put a bit more money in 2025.
Yes, that is correct. In 2025, we have put in a forecast for a capital build.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Go ahead, Councillor Blazek.
So I had a similar question, but mine was about specifically childcare facilities, and I didn't see anything about that reflected in the facilities budget. And maybe it's the exact same answer, but I wouldn't mind hearing from Mr. Newell if we could.
Yeah, go ahead, CO Snell.
I was going to say, I think I could take that. So currently right now, all the new spaces that are funded by the province are allocated through the school boards. So we're getting new positions at Eastdale. So in order for them to be licensed through our CSM, they have to be in cooperation with either the CSM and the school board. So if we were to go out and build our own daycare spaces, we'd be almost doing that on our own, and we would not likely qualify for licensing under the $10 an hour daycare. So the new spaces will have to be a joint project with our community service manager, school boards, and municipalities. So you're correct that there's probably nothing coming in other than hopefully the new spaces coming online at Eastdale in the next little bit, but we have no announcements or information from the city of Stratford or the school boards at this time.
Go ahead, Mayor Kiesenberg.
Sort of supplementary to that, I just want to make sure I understand. I mean, in North Perth, we are running out of schools to put daycare buildings or spaces onto, right? So then if we're tied to school board effort, with what will be left, if I'm following what you've said, is Elma. The other schools pretty much all have daycare facilities, which could be expanded, I suppose, but Elma's the only one that at this point is clear of a child care center and eligible, I suppose, in that context. So what happens in a community like this when you kind of run out of space? Because that seems like a very real possibility, right? They've already built onto Westfield there. They've built, in various locations in our community, right? Now what?
So certainly we're going to have to partner with the school board because, as we know, even the capacity of the school that have been built in the last 5 years in our community are already experiencing their own growth pressures. So we're going to have to continue to work with our partners in the community to look at, as they make changes to reflect their needs, we're going to have to be ready as well to look at the early childhood education options. Certainly, Westfield, the school board at the time had the foresight to purchase a big enough piece of property to allow for expansion, and obviously that might be something that will have to be looked at in the future. But we'll certainly continue to work with both school boards to look at what they have in store for our community and how we can partner with them and the city of Stratford to look at early childhood education. We can add on to spaces like we did in Moncton for early childhood spaces, but again, that's not their preference at the moment. It is to basically have one-stop shopping for parents. But it's something we can take up with the community's service manager.
Go ahead, Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Chair. And just further to that point, clearly the province has a role to play in this issue. I mean, we can talk about school boards and so on, and I think the reality is that this council, I think, understands, based on our presentation from Dr. Lisa Walsh and Nancy Rothwell, the chair of the board, is that the province is the one that holds the purse strings in terms of when and where those expansions occur. And it's a double whammy when we look at growth pressures within our municipality, but also the need for childcare, and especially with the advent of lower cost daycare and a desire for people to utilize those services. And then, frankly, when you know what the wait list is for daycare within our municipality, I think, and it's not even funny, when an expectant mother is putting their child that's maybe 1 month in the womb already on a list, you never want to count on that at all. So I think continued, I don't want to use the word pressure, continued dialogue, discussions, encouragements to our province to realize that we need them to come to the table and really show foresight on this, not just for our daycares, because I mean that's our specific need on the municipal side, but also for our people living within our community, that our schools are able to expand not just on a piecemeal basis, but on a longer term basis. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Any other questions or discussion? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Chair Anstead. And this may be operations as well, but I thought I would bring this up. I'm just having questions around thoughts with the physician and even nursing healthcare recruitment in our community, and in terms of perhaps funding, but other things that can be done on that score, and if that's capital or if that's operations. Thank you.
Sorry, JSNL, do you want to weigh in on that? Sorry.
So any partnership we would have with the hospital or the healthcare recruitment team has fallen in operations in the past as a grant to another party. So that will come forward in operations.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Blazak.
I would like for a moment to go back to the discussion about childcare. Sorry, Chris. You said somebody who, discovers that they're expecting and puts their expectant child on a list immediately. I have spoken to many families in this community who, the moment they found out they were pregnant, put their expected child on a list. I know children who are 2.5 years old who are still on that list. So I'm wondering what we can be doing instead of, I don't want to say that passively waiting for the province to do something about it, but I kind of want to say passively waiting for the province to do something about it. What can we do to move the province in the right direction, to be proactive, to advocate for our community? Because people got to go to work.
Go ahead, COS now.
So I was actually at a meeting today with my fellow CEOs from the county and economic development staff. And this was a conversation around the issue because it's about workforce retention and recruitment as well. So it's not an easy answer. Certainly at North Perth, we've been offering courses even through our Set 7 to actually give people the tools to run their in-home daycares. That has provided some success. The unfortunate part is not everybody then qualifies for the $10 an hour daycare program, or $10, which isn't actually $10 a day. I got to quit using that because it's never going to be really $10 a day. But anyway, the subsidized federal program. It's going to have to be a balance of both private and public sector solutions. I don't think we can build the spaces fast enough to keep up with the demand with the current system, but we also have to go back to the time where we have private home daycares providing some of that relief. And again, we're going to have to advocate to the province to lighten up on some of the rules around home daycares. And I know that gets to be pretty tricky because we certainly want safety to be one of the main priorities of all our daycare centers, but it certainly is a lot of red tape for a person to operate a home daycare. So I think it's going to take a lot of efforts on all of us, including our service manager, maybe Amy, if she's available. I maybe would have further comments on this, what we can see from programming. But yeah, there's things we're trying, but it's difficult. We can't keep up with the demand. There's no question about it.
Thanks very much, CO Snell. Would it be maybe worthwhile if Amy was online, if she could weigh in with her thoughts on the issue, if she's available? Oh, go ahead, Carter.
So I have a message from Amy. She says she's having problems with her connectivity. They're communicating regularly and advocating for childcare needs. Our CMSMs are advocating at the provincial level as well. We are making efforts to find childcare needs where we can.
Okay, thanks very much, Ms. Gangle. Any other questions or discussion points at this point from other members of council? Or anything that's on the capital budget or the 10-year forecasted budget as well? Yeah, go ahead, CO Snell.
Just because there's been a couple comments around the visiting session, so actually at the operation meetings where we will have a report basically kind of addressing and outlining how we're trying to address everything that was mentioned at the visiting session, whether it's something we're in the process of doing, whether it's something we're going to be looking at, or how we plan on addressing all the items brought up by council at the visiting session.
Okay, thank you. I actually did have a question, and I think we've discussed this before, Deputy Clerk Belfour, but the combined capital projects for the 10-year budget, again, this was if everything was approved, correct? And the carryover for that entire time, correct? Sorry, could you just come to the microphone? Sorry.
So for the 2024 budget, if there were funds that were already acquired and used of the 2023 budget, it was not carried over. Only what was required in 2024 was carried over. If no funds were used of what was requested, it got brought over as the full amount for their request for 2024.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Just speak to a couple of the points that were brought up during the meeting. There were approximately 220 projects for the 10-year forecast. So we did not send out the full descriptions. They are not all finalized because in some cases it was what they knew as a dollar amount for the future, and then in some cases they had to go out and find those dollars from engineers, that kind of thing. We can provide a list of each one of the years for you in the future. As Chris mentioned, the visioning sheet and the capital 10-year forecast is just the start of what the program is able to do. So we look forward to providing you even further information as to what we would require for loans in the future, what kind of development charges, reserves, and then the reporting of those types of things will all be combined with this report in the future. So there's lots yet to come, but this was a good start so council could see where we are and where we're going. So thank you.
CO Snell, go ahead.
Just sort of my final comments for tonight, and I certainly made notice of the mayor's mentioning of it. When I first seen the list, I obviously had the same reaction that this is, again, another pretty aggressive program. I looked Again, looking forward though, the next few years are almost just as heavy, so it's not like, I mean, I hate to say we're just kicking the can down the road every time we don't do something this year. I did ask and challenge the team to make sure that they were putting forward everything realistically that they could get done. Obviously, some of the projects are so big, they're not going to be done in 1 year, no matter when we start them. But I felt that staff did really go through the project list, tried to prioritize what was really important to be done in 2024, and the list is still as big as it is. We were able to shave a couple off or delay them until 2025, but that just exaggerates the problem for next year. Anyway, so we did pretty well, I think, in 2023, so hopefully we have another good year in 2024, although the numbers bigger again this year.
Yep, go ahead, Clerk Carter. Oh, yes, go ahead, Councillor Richardson. I apologize.
Thank you, and through the chair. Sorry, I know what it's like sitting here just to get noticed. I was just wondering. I do believe I didn't lower my hand. My apologies. That Ms. Balfour had possibly answered the question. Just even in the flip book to have on the department page synopsis for the 10-year outlay, just a year by year approximately what that amount is for. I don't know, especially if we're guesstimating from year to year. I don't know if it's really needed or for the staff effort to put in for full costing and stuff until we get closer to it. But just having a wherewithal of what's going to be happening in the next 10 years as to what the budget line happens to be for 2028. It can be something very simple that if it requires explanation, but that's all I was asking. And I do believe that that's coming. So, but it would be nice to have that by department if possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Richardson. We've made note of that. Any other questions or comments at this point, Council? Okay. So moving forward, we'll go to agenda item 8, which is our council direction, and this is the point in the agenda where we can provide direction to staff in terms of what we've heard tonight. And we've had a good discussion, but again, this is a time when councillors and the mayor and deputy mayor can provide their direction on where they would like to, some changes perhaps, or other things that they would like to see, or things of that nature. So I'll open it up to discussion again at this point. Anything that hasn't been covered? Go ahead, Mayor Kiesenberg.
I think, my rant earlier was sufficient. I wanted noted that I have concerns about the cost of playground equipment and about the cost of the Listowel pool. And that we need to be careful about those particular line items, in my humble opinion.
Thank you, Mayor Kiesenberg, and I shared those sentiments as well earlier in my comments. Was there any other councillors that had other? Go ahead, Councillor Blazek.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I've been giving a little bit of thought to what Councillor Nordholm brought up about the electric vehicles versus ones that use traditional fuel. I'm wondering if before making any purchases, staff could provide council with some numbers comparing, actual cost savings over long periods of time, or the actual in neighboring communities, the effectiveness of these vehicles. It is just such a really big purchase when you compare a non-electric vehicle, and I know people are concerned about climate change, but I would like to see some numbers on the actual impacts of this vehicle versus a traditionally fuel-powered vehicle.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor. We can we've made note of that, I believe. Councillor Roth. Oh. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Rothwell, if you.
Thank you. Just further to that point, I believe, is there 4 vehicles, I think, that we had, 2 in the building department for pickup trucks, and then 1 in No, not operations. Water, wastewater, right? Where's the, is there a fourth? Am I mistaken? Yes, and bylaw enforcement.
Yes.
So, I mean, we leave it to staff to come forward with the best vehicle that they believe is necessary. I'm just wondering if that was only on a department basis or if it's overall for the municipality. And I know we do have necessity within our municipality for sort of people mover type vehicles as opposed like more than just one or two people in a vehicle, which is basically a pickup truck. You can only have two in, I think, for the most part, whereas perhaps something a bit more substantial, such as sport utility vehicle or so on. I did hear there is a desire to go away from the current hybrid vehicle for more rugged terrain and so on. But frankly, my understanding is that the building department has had an SUV for quite some time, and I'm just wondering as to whether a pickup truck is, for example, is the best route for that department or not. And we're looking at two of them instead of one pickup truck for a more rugged situation and perhaps a smaller vehicle elsewhere. I'm just, as part of our carbon footprint initiative, I think we better, speak up to what it is that we're doing. And frankly, I mean, we're in a farming community. There's all kinds of pickup trucks. So don't take this as a slight against pickup trucks. Frankly, I'm just wondering if there is truly a need for two pickup trucks in the building department. And really looking at that, and further to Councillor Blazek and Councillor Nordum, I think we really need to look hard at the issues in terms of operational costs going into the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Rothwell. Councillor Andreessen, go ahead.
Chair Instead, further to the discussion just around the pool and MAP 59 and other larger projects and playground equipment, perhaps the discussion could be around more policy around fundraising in the future to look at, when we decide on these kinds of projects, what's our policy going to be around that? And that may help us move forward in thinking about how we budget for that based on a fundraising policy we might come up with. So I just thought I'd add that in terms of further discussion. Thanks.
No, that's a good point. Thank you very much. Any additional items at this point or direction for staff? Okay. All right. So I believe we've reached the end of our discussion this evening. I think that staff has sufficient feedback to move forward at this point. So looking at our agenda, our next item would be item 9.1, which is our confirmatory bylaw. And I'll just read that into the record. Bylaw number 127, 2023, being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. I'm looking for a mover for that. Councillor Andreessen and Vice Chair Nordum. We'll have the vote on that. And that is carried. Thank you. Council, we've reached the end of our deliberations this evening. At this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:48 p.m. I'll just read it into the record that the council budget meeting adjourns at 8:48 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, November 23rd, 2023 at 7 p.m. Looking for a mover, Councillor Rothwell and Vice Chair Nordum. Have the vote on that. And that is carried. This